Greetings and welcome back, hunters. I'm Agent Cara Blackwood, your assigned lead paranormal investigator. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Today's hunt is codenamed Spirited Spirit. You'll know why by the end. Now let's jump into the files that I have here for you today. But before we do, make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and hit that noti bell so you can help keep the world safe from the ghostly horrors and the like. The more you know, the safer you are. Our case begins in the small town of Baker, Missouri, where an old woman is living out her single life in an old 2-story farmhouse, which is nestled in the woods in a bundle of trees that was far from any sort of civilization. It had a large pasture and fields upon fields of lands that used to have crops but have long been forgotten by any sort of people. She was far too old to worry about farming. It would have been more likely that she'd break a hip trying to actually go out there and do so. And she definitely wasn't out to do that. So that was fine by Lisa Holden, who just turned 70 years old. The expansive wilderness and the wide open spaces were a breath of fresh air and provided a peaceful life for the old lady to live out the rest of her days. Lisa's passions were painting and doing rough sketches in her sketchbook. She had a natural talent and an eye for beauty to give even Van Gogh a run for his money. And everyone knows Van Gogh to be an extremely talented artist. Lisa's preference was mainly landscapes or nature-esque animal scenes. Her grandchildren urged her over the years to take her work to a gallery for the world to enjoy and see, and also get profits from it. But she always adamantly refused, telling them, "I do this for myself, for the joy of it and the memories. I don't need fame or fortune or any of that. That would just ruin it." And she didn't want the world or some hoity-toity city folks to ruin that for her or distort the original art that she was creating. Her grandchildren didn't really understand it. But eventually they just had to let it go because after all, it was what she wanted. And they just wanted her to be happy. On most days, when the weather permitted, Lisa was found outside her home painting or in the parks around town doing the same. Kids would be running around playing and would giggle and ask for their portrait to be painted. And she would always give them the goofiest of faces, and they loved it. And they had kept them for ages, and he would come by again to ask for more portraits. She was around 4'11" inches tall and had a gray pixie cut, usually a bit messy, with her bangs constantly falling over her eyes. Lisa was retired from her long years of working as an elementary school art teacher for kindergartners. She had loved the work that enriched children's minds and the beauty that could be found in the world with just their eyes, a little paint, imagination, and a paintbrush. Some of her students grew up and even made it to display their works of art in galleries and famous museums, in which Lisa made sure to visit them at least once per year to see their new art that they had come up with. Lisa lived her colorful hermit life until the bleak, dark year of 2009. First acknowledgement. August 5th, 2009. Lisa Holden was working on a new painting and was trying to use the new video camera one of her grandchildren gifted her for Christmas last year, when through the lens, she saw what looked to be like floating iridescent orbs. She moved her eye from around the camera to view her work, but she knew she hadn't painted anything like that. And sure enough, there was nothing there. Absolutely nothing. Nor had she ever seen anything like that in the orbs of all her years living in the house. She was currently sitting in her small little studio with a big bay window and decided she was going to paint them on the picture anyway. They would go quite beautifully with her canvas and everything she had started already for her landscape. They looked quite ethereal and beautiful. She began to work, making sure the colors and swirls were correct, humming an old lullaby to herself, completely unaware of the danger those beautiful orbs, as she put it, posed to herself. A couple days later, on August 7th, 2009, Lisa was busy preparing lunch, a ham and cheese sandwich with lettuce and tomatoes and mayonnaise, with her TV on in the background for white noise. As she went to the fridge to put away the condiments and other ingredients, the lights started flickering on and off, and the TV turned to static. She turned first to the light switch and turned it off, then on again, to see if maybe it was a small short or something. The lights themselves returned back to being steady. She furrowed her brows and then turned to the TV, where she messed with the rabbit ear antennas. Shortly after the regular picture returned, she thought to herself it was rather odd, but Lisa made a mental note to herself that she needed to contact an electrician to be sure everything was up and running properly. But we at the lodge knew better. Something definitely appeared to be present in her home. August 16th, 2009. More nights Lisa experienced lights glitching and flashing at her. She mused to herself that it's a good thing she decided to contact that electrician. The electrician, by the name of Morty, was scheduled for 1 p.m. He arrived a little bit late, but she didn't mind. All she wanted was the issue to be resolved. He gathered his gear and Lisa showed him to the breaker box that was in the basement. Then she went back to her sketches. Approximately 2 hours later, and a hefty bill of upwards of nearly thousands of dollars, the electrician came back with no explanations. Scratching his head, Morty explained that there were no signs at all of any shorts or issues with the electric. They both were very confused, but ultimately, all that could be done is to be sure to keep lots of emergency supplies, like flashlights, batteries, and emergency candles on hand. These actions, however, seemed to only make matters far more worse for the unfortunate old woman. September 6, 2009. While working in her studio painting the night sky, she began to feel a slight chill. The Weather Channel had advertised a meteor shower this evening, and she wanted to capture it. Lisa grabbed a cardigan that was on a nearby chair and shrugged it on. Then she continued painting. There it was again. She shivered more violently this time and swore she began to see her cold breath. She tried to hold on for a bit longer so she could at least finish the portion she was working on, but couldn't make it another moment. It was absolutely frigid. She rushed out of the room to check on the thermostat. Odd. As soon as she left that room, the temperature felt warm and cozy. Nothing like her studio. Lisa made it to the thermostat, and the reading was just where she had left it. A warm 72 degrees. She then rushed back to the studio, where the temperature had felt even colder than before. She kneeled down to put her hand in front of the vent, and the air being blown out was indeed warm. It just didn't make any sense whatsoever. How could it still be warm and the room be so freaking cold? Her brow crinkled in confusion, and then suddenly, with a gasp, it felt like a force of air knocked her over. Lisa blacked out in shock and didn't come back to consciousness until hours later. Something strange and otherworldly was at work here. October 5th, 2009. A hunter in the area was visiting a friend in the hospital. His friend began telling him about this strange older lady that was in the bed next to him, who had the strangest stories of why she was in here. Weird temperature changes in only one room of her house, making her sick, electrical disturbances, but no shorts or breakers blown, and even strange orbs. Everything he was stating sounded like it may be a very supernatural of origin. The expertise of the Hunter's Lodge would benefit her greatly. And with the evidence of eyewitness accounts before us, whatever entity that may be present in her house definitely needed to be sent back to the Vale. But as you all know, that's where we come in. With our know-how, professional tools, and go-get-'em attitude, we will hunt this entity down and bring this old woman peace. The hunt may be dangerous. Be advised and ever on your guard, because around every corner, it could be lurking. And the history of this entity goes back, far back into ancient times. And if it is left alone, it will surely devour this woman until she too becomes a vengeful spirit. All the tools needed have been provided to you, courtesy of the Lodge, to adequately exercise or gather evidence of their presence. On December 8, 2009, at approximately 10:30 p.m., an experienced hunter approached the woman's house. Lisa was still having tests run on her in the hospital, so the hunter was able to gather what was needed without being discovered or have eyewitness accounts of their hunt. One male hunter by the name of Max Wellington walked in with a video camera at the ready. The earliest of the sightings and eyewitness accounts listed were that possible orbs were present somewhere in the vicinity, and he was going to ensure that he found them. After about an hour maybe or so of surveying, first the entry, then the kitchen, and finally the art studio, orbs seemed to be present. Hovering over nearby the big bay window, there they were, swirling and dancing wildly. As he entered the studio, though, the door slammed shut, and the room immediately felt colder, even considering it was in the winter months. The hunter jumped to action, reaching for his thermometer to see what the temperature was. The reading itself was far below the normal temperature range, alarmingly so. Definitely a sign of evidence that something was amiss. And if he was correct on what may be haunting this room, he was in for the most dangerous time. Given it was freezing temps, this entity would move far faster. In the briefest of moments of him having that thought, a cold wind knocked the breath out of him to where he fell forward onto the floor. Then cold spots were felt on his ankles. Before he can even let out a gasp, he was being dragged out of the room and into the kitchen. He yelled and tried grabbing at anything he could actually grab, any furniture, anything that would stop the motion. But as it got warmer, the entity finally let him go. Max stood up, dusted himself off, with a determined look on his face. He then proceeded to rush back into the studio, to hide in a nearby storage closet, to wait safely, to avoid any harm coming to himself. Hours upon hours seemed to pass him by. He recited all the numbers from 100 down to 1 to pass the time, when suddenly the door creaked open again. He reached for his UV flashlight and shined it through the crack in the closet towards the door frame that he just got interacted with. Very faintly, and then more strongly, a distinct handprint was visible on its edge. These occurrences were reported around 0100 hours. He knew it was too soon to go out yet, so Max waited with bated breath. In, out. In, out. He breathed. Once the entity calmed down and the temperature seemed to level out a bit again, the hunter crept out to snap a photo of the UV evidence before swiftly exiting the studio. Although he wanted to do a quick check of the surrounding areas just to be sure he didn't miss any evidence. It was right then. Multiple doors began slamming. Max knew it was good he took precautions, because the evidence in question pointed towards an entity that he didn't want to mess with, no longer than he needed to. He reported back to the base after exiting the home, safely being able to extract at 0130 hours. Evidence of freezing temps, UV, and ghost orbs were gathered at the scene, unveiling the identity of the entity to be a Hantu. Now you should understand why it's codenamed the way it is. The evidence uncovered was highly valuable to setting the old woman free from its haunting presence. If there are any hunters out there, or those curious to join the fight, please refer to our Hunter's Guide to the Paranormal for more info on how to survive, and for some, exorcise, contain, or elude these entities. Don't rest easy, hunters, for there are many more investigations at large, and way more that need to be solved and vanquished, or unfortunate souls that are unable to rest easily. And until next time we convene in this hunter's cabin, stay safe, protect the innocent, always trust your instincts, and remember, the hunt is never done. Happy hunting!